Riker's Iron presents.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our MonTalk for Cthugrosh. We're going to be going over our typical format for our MonTalks. So I'm going to go over the alpha form, then I'm going to talk with our guests and community and share their thoughts about the alpha form, strategies in the alpha form, things to keep in mind in alpha form. Then I'm going to go over the hyper form. We're going to do the same thing afterwards. Talk with the guests, share their strats. Tips and all that. Then we're going to go over monster combo suggestions, unit suggestions, building support, map selection, and then we'll take a look at some stuff in the painting community. So yeah, so let us go over Cthugrosh alpha form. Let's start with the alpha form of Cthugrosh. He is Lords of Cthul monster, of course. We'll go over his basic stats here. So he's got speed 6 with high mobility, defense 8, pretty average there. Brawl, 7 action, 4 boost. Blast, range 3, 5 action, 3 boost. Power, 6 action, 4 boost. All pretty average, I think, about. At least from what I've played. Health wise, he's got 11, which is pretty good. He's not a super squish. Actions. So he's got quite a few actions. All of his abilities are actually actions, so you can spend those action dice to perform these abilities. So his first action is sacrifice. During your monster activation, this model can spend 1 action die to perform a sacrifice action. Destroy 1 adjacent allied unit to restore 1 point of health to this monster, which is pretty cool. That's like a healing for him, which healing in this game is kind of rare, not too common. I personally don't think I've ever healed a monster before. So action summon. I'm often a victim of this one and the next one. During your monster activation, this model can spend 1 action die to perform a summon action. Take 1 faction unit, that's important because it's faction unit, not allied unit, from your unit reserves and place it into play adjacent to this model. So it has to be a Cthul unit. And action telekinesis. During your monster activation, this model can spend 1 action die to perform a telekinesis action. Choose 1 unit within 2 spaces of this model. Move the chosen unit 1 space. So, that's the alpha form of the mighty Cthugrosh. Let me jump into the voice chat here, and we shall say hello. Whoopity-doo. Hello.
Hey, Riker.
I'm just going to turn you up on in my earpiece. So we have Amber Wild. Say hello, Amber Wild.
Hello, Umberwild.
And we have Gearbox. Say hello, Gearbox.
Hello, Gearbox.
Oh, yeah. So, Amber Wild's coming from the side of actually playing this monster, where Gearbox and I are coming from the side of defending against this monster. This monster. So, yeah, let's kick this off. What do you guys think of Alpha Cthugrosh?
I actually think he's still a very strong and competitive monster. He excels at, Anthony's probably one of the best screeners out there, with telekinesis and summon. Both of those combined, he can help move units around him and place units to keep an opposing monster from getting aligned to him. So those are 2 very powerful abilities. Telekinesis is also great for moving screens out of your opponent's monster's way, so you can get aligned with them and step in there and wreck face.
I've been very much a victim of both of those actions quite frequently, especially playing against Sarah. So
yeah, and sacrifice. It's I actually don't use sacrifice that often. I'm usually using summon or TK more often than not. Than the sacrifice. But there is, and when we start talking about the synergies, I'll go ahead and talk about it right now. The sacrifices, when you combine that with a meat slave, you get a really interesting effect with that, because the inks or the meat slave, if the meat slave is destroyed, doesn't matter how he's destroyed, he gets to bring in another unit in that same square.
Yeah, that seems to be the pretty go-to annoyance with facing off against him. I know it's always planned for that, so always have a backup attack. Like if something's in your way, you're going to have to commit those two. Like if you get rapid fire, for example, you're going to have to commit to get rid of that sacrifice. That summoned diddly-do.
Yeah, the meat slave is annoying when it's summoned. I will mention two things. One, this is probably the best alpha form in the game, even though it doesn't look like it, because it has those three actions. It can heal itself, it can descreen, and it can screen itself.
Yeah.
The only disadvantage is that because you can only perform one action per model and one model per action during unit turns, you can't perform all three of these actions in one turn. Otherwise, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be insane. I always find that whenever I'm facing off against the alpha form, I'm pretty much facing off against the alpha form the majority of the game, and I feel like that's more than adequate, at least if I was playing him.
I like to trade forms for Cthugrosh. I will take 7-8 damage in retaliation for dealing 6 damage to Cthugrosh, because taking him out of alpha form is extremely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I do find that I never even thought of that. The few times that I have gone gung-ho at Cthugrosh, it really made a difference for swinging the game in a direction that was much more preferred. It was a little less scary, if you will.
Yeah, he has a lot of staying power. That is for sure.
Do you? I know that Gearbox says that for power wise, he's pretty potent. But do you, Amber Wild, find it a hindrance or any sort of annoyance that he doesn't have any sort of special attack ability or anything outside of his actions?
No, I just think that his defense, because of his screening abilities and his telekinesis, is just so strong that he's really not hindered by anything like that at all. He doesn't. His only downfall really is that he really doesn't quite have the damage output as some other monsters.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd probably want to pair him up with a much more aggressive monster. He's much more of a turtly monster.
Yeah.
He kind of shambles up the board, sets up his screen, shambles up the board, and kind of waits for some opportunities. Or if you've got your other monster, you can feed him some opportunities too.
Yeah, my wife likes playing him with Gorgadra just for the pure, like, Gorgadra's aggressive and Cthulhu's a little bit more of a wizardy asshole in the backfield, setting things up.
Yeah, that's what my play partner played for most of late 2018. He was playing Cthugrosh and Gorgadra because those were the only monsters available, and he was destroying me with that combo.
Yeah, it's really potent. I'm just going to pop in a chat here. Armored Athema says, the guy is exactly the reason why I bought Mecha Maxim. Jam is going to help me out a lot against him. So any other final notes on the alpha form of Cthugrosh?
Yeah, I do have one thing I've noticed. A typical strategy in playing against people who have spread out over the board is to use their own models, their own units to screen.
Mm-hmm.
And against Cthugrosh, that's a doubly terrible thing to do, because Cthugrosh will come up, not use telekinesis, but will use sacrifice on his own model, then step into alignment, and then make the attack. And suddenly you've taken a 4 damage swing rather than a 3.
That's actually really clever. I would never have thought of that. It would have taken me forever to figure that out. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, and that applies with any sacrifice works for any unit, allied unit.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I totally missed that too. I was reading it like summon with faction. Okay, cool. Yeah, so
Yeah, that's why Alpha Cthugrosh is such a pain to deal with, because sacrifice can be used on any turn where he's not being pressured or applying pressure.
really neat. Love it. Now you're making me want to play this guy. Let's go over his base stats and his attacks, and then we'll jump into his abilities, what he loses, and what he gains for the alpha form. So, he has speed 6 still, with high mobility and defense 8. He doesn't gain anything from going hyper. Brawl bumps up 1 action dice to 8 action dice and 5 boost, which is pretty cool. Blast, he goes into a 5 range with 5 action, 4 boost, so he gains an extra boost on there, and he gains Fling, which is a very fun ability. When this attack hits a unit, choose a building or enemy model within 5 spaces of the unit hit. Roll the dice in play. If the chosen model's defense is equal to or less than the number of strikes rolled, it takes 1 damage point. His power attack goes up to 7 action, 4 boost. The boost stays the same. Cthulgrosh loses sacrifice, but he retains his action summon, his action telekinesis, and he gains the ability Terrify. So while adjacent to this model, enemy units cannot roll boost dice in their attacks. Pretty damn cool. And I'm sure there's going to be some talk about that specific ability coming up. And he has 5 health in his alpha form. Oh, sorry, hyper form. So let's jump back in. So what do you guys think?
The hyper form of Cthugrosh is not as scary as the alpha form of Cthugrosh. It's still really scary, but it can't keep healing itself at the cost of 1 unit and 1 action die.
Mm-hmm.
The loss of sacrifice really changes the way he plays, so that he can't just hang out in the back and keep munching on his own units.
And flinging stuff around if anything gets close.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with Gearbox there. Yeah, the alpha form doesn't bring a whole lot more, and yeah, he's just not quite as potent because of just that loss of sacrifice, just having that little edge. Hey, I'm about ready to go alpha. I'll just eat a monster or a unit and make it that much harder for you to get me there, kind of thing.
It seems very rare that there's that you don't want to be in hyperform. I mean, hyperform, you're getting close to dead, but it seems like there's always like a really epic ability that changes the whole way the monster plays for the better in hyperform. But it feels like Cthulgrosh is actually the opposite.
Yeah, if my opponent somehow manages to get me down to 5 health with Cthulgrosh, I'm looking for downtown high rise so I can munch on that so I can get back to alpha.
That's pretty cool. Now, Terrify, what do you guys think? Situational piece or?
I have not found it really come into play. Usually he's kind of getting shot more than brawled with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the only and his defense is just high enough anyways that you're not really going to be brawling with him with many units either. And you're probably going to be shooting at him if you're, for the most part anyways.
Yeah, I feel like
units.
I feel like Terrify is mostly an anti-Carnodon, anti-Chomper ability. Just so you don't have to worry about those things. And if they do get close, you can fling them away.
Yeah, it's a little bit of safety net.
Even then, it's sort of meh in that, like, it prevents units from brawling you, and it doesn't prevent them from blasting you, and it rarely comes into play, quite frankly. Cthugrosh can still screen and descreen with the telekinesis and with the summon abilities.
Yeah.
In hyperform, which can be compared to Ares, which loses the descreen abilities in hyper. Still, I don't want to face Cthugrosh in a one-on-one monster fight.
Very true. I've the few times that I have gone one-on-one with him was not a very pleasant experience. It just felt like a slog. It's just like, oh, come on, like, get in there.
Yeah, the only thing you can hope, or the best scenario playing against Cthugrosh is hope that your opponent makes a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, which I often do. Fling. Now, how do you guys feel about Fling with the range 5 blast? I love range 5 blasts on monsters. It always feels so powerful. I always feel like when I was playing Defender X, that 3 range with beatback just felt a little too short for me.
The 5 range blast, like you said, that's great. It helps clearing a screen for your other monster to get in there. And with the Fling on top of that too, you can, if you're trying to get rid of a double screen, which can be really hard at times, that Fling really helps out there, so you can really clear out those 2 units that are in your way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great, and then you get 2 power dice to boost.
Yeah, that's true. Take a little step and do.
It also can reach in from the midfield into the opponent's backfield if you're blasting from your side of the board, because that is effectively a range 10 blast if it hits something at range 5 in the middle. Fling is not a blast attack in its trigger, but it still reaches out really far across the board.
Yeah. I never even thought of that. Maxing it and then maxing it at both ends of that.
Yeah, because the Fling is from the target of the attack.
Yeah, and not your thing. That's a really good point. You can take down potentially a building or something. Take down a little power base, little mini power base there. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to talk about for Alpha Form before we move on to pairings and stuff. Of Hyperform, sorry.
No, he's almost the same as Alpha Form.
Yeah. Just a little.
Just feel a little sure there.
A little less sturdy, I guess. That's his thing. And let's talk about monster pairings, folks. Monster pairings. I like to go over our top pairings, so probably the top two that we'd probably swap in and out between, and also the bottom two, ones that we would not want to ever pair with Cthugrosh. So let's start with the top two. I'm going to lean on Emberwild on this one because I don't really play this guy, so I'm not too versed other than being a victim of the pains that come along with facing him and his buddy.
So I really like pairing him up with an aggressive monster, preferably something that so I've ran him with Rogzor quite a bit, and that was a lot of fun because he's got that blast out there, and he can generate some really good power dice with his blast attacks by blowing up buildings and destroying units that are trying to secure it. So that's really effective. And of course, the more aggressive one is going to go down first, and then you're left with, hopefully your aggressive monster is going to take out at least one of the other monsters, and then put some hurt on the last monster on your opponent, and Cthulgrosh could just kind of like take his time dealing with that. So I like Rogzor with him is pretty good. I've played a really grind fest with him and Ares Mothership. Those were kind of fun, but those are a very tactical game, and if you lose concentration, you're going to lose the game because it's all about screening with those two monsters. But it's fun. What's his name? The Subterran monster.
Hammerclack?
Hammerclack, yeah. I like Hammerclack a lot. I think he is probably one of the best destroyer monsters, especially in Alpha. When he came out, he is the only Alpha that could deal super damage with his crunch ability. It wasn't guaranteed, but you could manipulate dice to increase your odds with that. So that's another good one that's kind of fun to play with. And we've mentioned Gorgadra. Gorgadra's pretty good too. Again, he's got all that power dice generation with that, and you really kind of need that with Cthugrosh because he doesn't have a whole lot of damage dealing potential. He's just going to slug it out with you little by little, and it'll whittle you down.
Is there any other Lord of Cthul that you would pair him up with? I know that Yasheth kind of gets a bad name, but what about Olgoth? Is Olgoth...
I haven't ran Olgoth. Olgoth would be interesting too because he has kind of a similar screening thing if you hit him. I haven't had a chance to put Olgoth on the table yet though, so even though I've got him, but that's because I'm trying to mod him. But
So Olgoth, in my experience, doesn't accomplish much outside of Olgoth's alpha form. And his alpha form only has like 4 or 5 health. It's difficult to get the mileage out of that alpha form for Olgoth that you want, though it pairs thematically very well with Cthugrosh in that you can bring 20 Lords of Cthulhu units and have all 20 on the table at one point because you're bringing out more and more as the game continues. I feel that Cthugrosh's his monster pairing is not as meaningful as his unit pairing because Cthugrosh is self-sufficient. So long as you pick another good monster with Cthugrosh, Cthugrosh can do Cthugroshy things and either take aggro or heal up while the other monster goes around and does whatever the other monster is trying to accomplish. So you could go with Gallimaxis or Gorgadra or Cybercon or Tharsis 5 or who's the other new one? Or Globicus, or you could play Demos even. Like it's not about what pairs well with Cthugrosh, it's about what do you want to play alongside Cthugrosh, because Cthugrosh can hold Cthugrosh's own.
That makes sense. That's probably maybe a good segue into the next section. Maybe the worst pairing. I know that we just kind of established that we have some fun choices like Gorgadra, what was the other one there? That you said that you enjoyed? Rogzor, Gallamaxis, or sorry, Hammerclack. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Hammerclack is it's pretty good.
Now, what would you never play with him? Like, what would be your nay, sir? I pass.
I would
on
probably
this.
never play Yashith.
Yeah, I knew that was gonna come. So he's bottom of the barrel, but let's say Yash didn't exist. What would be your not really feeling the pair up here?
Probably really want to pair him up with much of the other Lords of Cthulhu. Obviously, Yashith has some weaknesses that Cthugrosh can't help bring up, and I'm not sure that Olgoth is aggressive enough to get the stuff done that you would want your second monster to be doing. Ares can do some stuff, but again, that's a very tactical game on your side.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very difficult. You can do a lot with it, but it is very difficult to keep the edge. One little mistake and you could be done. But yeah, I mean, basically, like Grindbox was saying, it's whatever you want that other monster to do. So if you've got a halfway decent monster, he's going to do well with Cthugrosh, and they just go about doing their thing on the map. Cthugrosh really doesn't offer a whole lot of synergy with other monsters, and vice versa. He doesn't really benefit a lot from other monsters either.
So he feels a little bit like the Defender X of Destroyers. He kind of just he does his thing, he pairs, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's a lot better than Defender X, though.
Yeah. I was gonna say, my poor Defender X, how I love thee. Let me count the ways. Okay, so let's segue into unit stuff. So obviously, I think the most obvious thing is bring in a good chunk of Cthulhu units for all of his fancy shenanigans.
So meat slaves are definitely going to be. You have to take at least two, if not more. They're kind of fun. Taskmasters, you're going to bring those anyways, so they pair really nice with the meat slaves and
cheap summons.
Cheap summons, TK on monster or unit turns, speed boosts if they're near him, that kind of stuff. And then he's also got fling on his, I think it's his brawls.
So you want to bring two taskmasters to go with those two meat slaves?
Definitely. It's definitely a good plan. The other thing I like to go with him is Squicks for their disruption ability. So, and they've also got flight too. So if I need to put a unit down on some hazard tile, I could drop a Squicks down there and I get the benefit of a screen. And also, if you do manage to get in there, you're going to lose a boost die.
That's pretty cool.
Spitters are also something you want to think about bringing. With their extinguisher ability, being able to take out hazards that he could potentially be thrown in later in the game are all great options.
Now, any of the new release stuff that's come out, like the Hellion and stuff, anything? Have you had a chance to play with any of those?
They're good. They're good on their own, but they don't really offer a lot for Cthugrosh. Maybe being able to summon in some snatchers, and then they can start multiplying, downfield that way.
Yeah.
Gives you more screening abilities for the down the road down there. And again, for screening options, bring your UCI jet and have the Shadow Sun Industries on your side that they can run through and help build up in that way.
Now, any must-haves or nods to things outside of the Cthulhu units?
Well, I really like the UCI jet for the destroyers in general. Just be able to get my units off my side of the board down on the other side is really strong. I don't know how long that will last, but we'll play it as long as I can. Yeah, again, the other units that you're going to bring just to help, deal damage. So I usually, if I'm playing Planet Eaters, I like to bring Chompers just because they can dish out a whole lot of damage and generate a lot of power dice if you're attacking units with them. And you have a pretty good chance of actually dealing some damage on your opponent's monster if you get the opportunity to. So those ones are fun. Again, just great units in general you're going to be bringing with you.
Now, maybe we should also, for people who might be watching right now who have no idea what meat slaves actually do and why we recommend them so highly, maybe you guys can explain the summon action and the sacrifice action and how they work with the meat slave itself.
All right, so the meat slave only has one ability. They're not very fast. They're speed 4 and only defense 2, but they've got, and they're also a cost 2, so they're kind of expensive to bring out. But their special unit or their special rules is incubator. When this model is destroyed, if the space is unoccupied, immediately replace it with the faction model from your reserves that does not have the incubator special rule. And with Cthugrosh, and he's got that special summon ability, and for 1 action die, he can bring out that meat slave. So you're saving yourself 1 action die by summoning it versus spawning it. The other nice thing about that is if he's using him as a screen, or he's close by, you can, if you haven't used another action yet, you can sacrifice that meat slave. And because sacrifice destroys the unit, the friendly allied unit, to restore that 1 health of life from Cthugrosh, that would trigger incubator on the meat slave. So then you can bring out your other more aggressive units, such as the Taskmaster. Or if you had screwed up earlier and didn't bring out the Squicks, and you wanted to have that little bit of defense that you could get from the Squicks, and you could bring him out that way too. Usually you're going to bring out a Taskmaster with the meat slave, though, just because he is just such a beast of a unit.
Gearbox, do you have any effective way of removing meat slaves?
No.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, is like, I don't think there's a good way to get rid of meat slaves and get rid of those 2 things back to back. Because
the way you deal with meat slaves is you move the battle to another part of the board, such that the meat slave is lost on somewhere where it's not mattering.
Yeah,
and just get alone there.
Yeah, that's the
just keep that meat slave out on the field if you're playing against them, because if they're out on the field and you leave it alone, you can't resummon it.
Yeah.
You have to do something crazy, like drop it into a hazard to get it back into your reserve so you can summon it later at the more appropriate place on the map. Yeah, things like Fling would work on it because it would, I believe that's correct. You could target the unit that is replaced by it.
That is how the rules work at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think feels really weird, but I mean, c'est la vie for now.
Yeah, it is a little bit weird, but
yeah, it complicates. Well, I guess it doesn't really. I don't know. It kind of does. In terms of making sense, to me, it doesn't, because I feel like all that stuff would happen instantaneously. But in terms of game actions, it makes sense in terms of the order of operations.
yeah, they'd have to word the incubate a little bit differently to allow that to come in at the end of the attack. After the, I don't know, it'd be weird. You'd have to like delay the trigger on that or something.
Yeah.
So.
Because it says immediately replace rather than at the end of the attack or whatever it would be. I don't know what it would be.
Right.
After the attack is resolved, or. Yeah, so that covers unit stuff. What about buildings? Buildings and map selection. Now, let's start with, I guess, with suggestions on buildings or things that might pair well with him. Beyond, I guess, the Cthul building, which is pretty just... It's the Cthulhu building.
The Cthulhu building's not as good with him because he doesn't need the discount from it for the most part. And he would benefit more from a downtown high-rise that he can brawl and eat rather than a building that's effectively a Defense 7 apartment in most games.
Yeah, downtown high-rises are great for him. That's probably the biggest building that would be good. Non-combustible buildings would be nice with him, because he's not taking that extra damage if he does get thrown into it. Probably don't want to bring the Spire building with him, the Tokyo Triumph, just because of that extra damage that you want to get with him, or that you would get with him. It effectively would be like a hazard. Power plants are nice for more power dice generation, and again, it's non-combustible. Same with the, I think it's the radar array. Reach out that blast just a little bit further out there if you need it.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Bringing that that hyper form range up to 6. That'd be pretty nice. Although you don't want to be in that form anyways, so.
Hopefully, but if you're there,
yeah,
you'd have that option.
So basically, just the high rise is kind of the must-have with Senor Cthulhu.
I'd bring 2 to 4 of those, yeah.
Okay. So map selection. Is there any map that you just would not want to pick, and one that you would want to play on with this guy? He seems like he's not really like a map-specific monster, like our last one, like Armodax. You know, those certain places play well with him.
I like to put him on a more densely populated map, more buildings on it. He's got the high mobility, so he's not hindered as much by that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got a Taskmaster, it kicks his speed up to 7, which gives him a little bit more positioning there. And if you've got the Industrial Complex, then that's even more speed that you can pump out of him, too.
I feel like his map selection would be... his map selection would be based on his paired monster, not so much based on him.
Yeah, pretty much.
You probably don't want to go to Isle because it's so lightly populated in terms of building density.
And you've also got that permanent hazard in the middle of the map that you can't deal with.
Yeah, he's got high mobility, but he doesn't have flight.
So, final verdict for the map stuff: monster pairing / what was the one that you mentioned again?
Oh, don't go to Isle of Annihilation.
Yeah, I feel like that map just generally sucks. Every time I play on it,
for certain monsters.
Yeah.
But I don't have fun on it.
yeah, the guys that I play with, I don't have fun with either on that map. Is there any sort of final nuggets for Cthugrosh from you guys before we move into just looking at some cool alternate schemes for Cthugrosh?
I think we've pretty much covered everything that's out there for him. I mean, he's not terribly complex, but he's just a Swiss Army knife. He's got all kinds of fun stuff to keep him alive.
And one of the few monsters in the game that's alpha preferred.
There is one question I don't think we've fully answered. Ember, do you have fun while playing as Cthugrosh?
Actually, I do have fun playing with Cthugrosh. Like, it's one of those things where, let's see, I don't have fun when I finish my turn and I realize that I've left the screen off of one side that leaves him open for a big damage roll. But other than that, I do have a lot of fun with him, being able to, clear screens and move in and do some fun stuff with him. So.
I wish that Protectors had some sort of dude like this, because seeing when my wife plays with him, all the little fun, little shifty nuggets and cool little things to do with him, I'm like, oh, I want to do that, and I can't. So definitely looks like a fun monster to play.